Hi, everybody. I'm Veda Scott, and you're listening to Wrestling Cheers.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You want to go where you can see that troubles are all the same. You want to go where everybody knows your name. You want to go where you can see that troubles are all the same. You want to go where everybody knows your name.
And welcome back to Wrestling Cheers, where everybody knows your name, especially when you have 9 lives. This is Wrestling Cheers. We like to talk about things going on in the Northeast Ohio independent wrestling scene. We preview shows, we review shows, and sometimes we even have interviews along the way. This is an interview episode with Veda Scott. I am your host. I am Justin Summers, and Wrestling Cheers is brought to you by the Trending Topics Network and Midwest Territory. Please rate, review, and subscribe your ever listen to this fine podcast, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or Podbean, WrestlingCheers.podbean.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Facebook.com/WrestlingCheers, Twitter.com/WrestlingCheers, and Instagram.com/WrestlingCheers. Email, if you so choose to desire, WrestlingCheers@gmail.com. And we have the merch store over at whatamaneuver.net. Like I said, this is an interview episode with the one and only Veda Scott. So, yeah, this interview actually on this day that this is releasing, January 30th, it is exactly 2 months ago that I sat down with Veda Scott. It was at UXWA at the show that they had on November 30th. Huge shout out to Razor Sharp and UXWA for allowing me a little bit of room at the previous building that they were running. This nice, really big room out of everybody's way where I was able to conduct this interview. And also earlier in the year, I did the Manders interview there. It was absolutely perfect. I had a lot of fun. And this was like one of the very few times that I did an interview actually during a show. This the second half of the show after intermission is when this all took place, and I missed the second half of that show, and I heard it was really, really good. So you can check that out. I think it's indiewrestling.us or whatever it is. I don't exactly have it pulled up. Part of Sorgatron Media. They're the ones that do it. Great bunch of people out there in Pittsburgh who do that. So anyway, I don't want to take too much of your time. I know we've had some shorter episodes. Like last week was probably one of the shortest episodes in a while. So this is a little bit different. So I'm really, really excited for this because Veda Scott is legitimately one of my favorite female wrestlers. Arguably, if I had to pick, it's like in between her and Natalya. And I've liked Natalya longer, but I've had more personal contact with Veda, so it's very up in the air, and I'm really, really, really happy like how much she's done outside of AIW, or outside of Cleveland for that matter, and it was cool. We had her in Cleveland for 2 days in a row. First time she had been in Cleveland since GNO, the very last GNO of ever, but it was in March of 2016, I believe. It was the last show that Biggins was at. So yeah, really, really happy to do this. I mentioned it early in the show, in the interview, that she was one of the first female wrestlers to appear on the Ohio Indie Report. A little bit of a history lesson for those who don't know. Wrestling Cheers, yes, this is the 156th episode, but prior to 2016, we were known as the Ohio Indie Report. We changed it mainly because we weren't concentrating on Ohio as a whole, and for the fact that we spelled indie I-N-D-Y, and that's frowned upon with part of the internet. Grammar police kept being called on us, so decided to do just an overhaul, decided to do a different name, and that's where we are today. But back then, I used to have wrestlers on, and we would do the previews for shows because I thought that was kind of cool, a little bit different than what most people were doing, but it ended up being a very hard to get wrestlers on, and on top of everything, like they don't know everything that's going on in the company, so that's how we got to where we are now, and it's a format that has been stuck with for a good long time. So without any further ado, here is my interview with Veda Scott.
Not ready for prime time wrestling. New episodes every Sunday. Love that podcast house.
And we're back on the podcast, and I am joined by one of my favorite female wrestlers of all time. And actually, you were the first person to ever kind of be on this podcast feed back, the first female I made, on this podcast feed back when it was the Ohio Indie Report. We were with none other than Veda Scott.
Heyo. Nope, it's me. And I remember that. I remember doing that because it's one of the first podcasts I did too, I think.
Really?
It was.
Holy
I had a period of time where I was like all in on doing different interviews, and then I kind of like eased off on it because I'm like, oh, a lot of them feel like they're the same, and now I'm coming back to doing them again. So you're in my like secondary podcast renaissance now.
Well, I mean, that gets into a whole different thing. I've actually had the conversation with somebody who's here today, Ziggy. Back when she was Jinx, we were talking about how a lot of podcasters, they do job interviews more than an actual interview or a conversation, because if I want to, I can look up a wrestler, find just whatever podcast, and like listen to all the interviews, and that's always, when did you start becoming a fan? What was your training like?
What's your dream matches? And it's always like the exact same questions, to which half the time I don't even have an answer because it changes all the time. So I kind of like took a little break from doing interviews, especially like long form ones, only because I wanted to like things to happen in my life that I could talk about, because I felt like we were just rehashing the same subjects over and over. But now I'm back, baby.
Yeah, and even too, like back when you were on, it wasn't an interview. I was doing a thing which it sounded cool at the time, but it was harder trying to get wrestlers on to do previews for AIW shows.
Yes, I remember that.
So it was like, hey, come on and let's pump up the show. But I think it got to a point there was like some wrestlers would be like, well, I'm not following along with AIW. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of hard. So I started to do more, have like fans come on and everything. And that's where like we evolved.
Right. Who are like sometimes more invested in the wrestling than the wrestlers, which is sad. But like it makes for like you said, like a preview, like at least they're going to every show and like are invested in it. But I remember that because we talked a little bit about just almost like a state of AIW kind of situation was the format for the podcast, and I liked that. It was different.
So you're back here in Cleveland for the first time. I did the math, 993 days.
That's a while. That's 3 years, right? Basically 3 years.
It'll be 3 years because the last show that I remember you being on was the last GNO.
Right. So that was, about 3 years.
Yeah, and that was...
Two and a half, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while. I was excited that I could do that. We'll do AIW last night, and then this other show tonight is also in Cleveland. So I've been in Cleveland for 2 days. A lot of the same fans, that I knew when I used to do AIW really regularly. I just haven't been wrestling in the States all that often in the past 2 years.
You've been everywhere.
Well, I've been a small selection of everywhere.
Well,
in terms of like... Objectively, when you look at the world, not everywhere. But in terms of like pro wrestling, I've been a decent amount of places recently, and that's been really cool.
Like, you've been to like Canada, England, Japan. I think those are like some of the three big spots to go to. Right
now, yes, I would say. Although there's wrestling emerging everywhere, which I think is really exciting. And that's kind of like the next wave of what I want to pursue, is like going to a lot more wrestling in places where it's new or like a scene is growing or a scene is building. And I think that's really exciting too. Like I just wrestled in, if you don't mind me like now taking over the podcast.
That's fine.
I just did a show. I just got back from I was staying in England, so I'll say I got back from England like 3 weeks ago. But in this time, I traveled around a little bit and I did shows in different countries.
Yeah.
And I got to do a show for Body Slam Wrestling, which is in Denmark.
Okay.
And they run their big shows in Copenhagen, which is the capital of Denmark. And I talked to the promoter there for a long time about how like there wasn't much of a wrestling scene, or it was like very old fashioned, how they're kind of rebuilding it. And now these shows are like super cool, super fun. The crowd was insane. It was one of the craziest crowds I've ever been in front of. And they're just basically rebuilding the Danish independent wrestling scene. Yeah. Kind of almost from the ground up. They use a lot of talent from like Sweden, from Norway, from other Scandinavian countries. They call it Scandigraps, and they're just they're rebuilding this wrestling scene that kind of like fell apart, or like was seen as old fashioned, or had a lot of like maybe negative people in it. And it's a bunch of younger people now like rebuilding things and getting an audience back and making it cool again and making it fun. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing I want to be involved in. There's a lot of Thailand, Singapore, like a lot of places have emerging wrestling scenes. And I think that's the most exciting thing for me in wrestling. But yeah, this show I did in Body Slam in Copenhagen was just one of the most fun shows I've ever been on, one of the best crowds I've ever been on. And like they are a relatively new thing happening. Not that pro wrestling is new to Denmark, but this idea of independent pro wrestling, the way that we think of it is indie pro wrestling, that's kind of new.
Would it be kind of like going to maybe, I don't know, some state without like a huge wrestling scene? Like I'm going to say, like, because I don't know much about, let's say like New Mexico, where like there's nothing much, but you're helping build like what's going to be that
and
big
like,
promotion for them.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, when I'm talking about this, like from a wrestler perspective, like there's a lot of wrestlers who I think are not where they're trying to wrestle. Like maybe there's not a great scene or not a super positive scene. And some people have the ability to move or relocate and go someplace where there is more wrestling. And that's super cool. And if you can do that, sure, do that. But if you want to be more invested in what you're doing locally, I think then it becomes your personal responsibility to invest in your local scene and build that up as much as you can. And there are ways to do that are like, of course you can run shows and that's like the easiest and hardest way to do things. Yeah. But like, let's say maybe that's not something you do, then at least like get together all the pro wrestlers in your area and like talk about wrestling, train together, like just make each other better. Because what ends up happening in a lot of these like places where maybe pro wrestling isn't super popular or there's not a lot of wrestlers is it just takes one person to get really invested. And it takes one person to say, I'm going to like better myself. And sometimes it means they have to leave for a little while, wrestle other places. They get better. They learn new things. They learn new ideas for pro wrestling. And then they come back. That's the important part. They come back and then everyone starts working together and they teach things and then the scene grows from there. And I think seeing that happening is really exciting. And there's a lot of pockets of that if you pay attention to it in wrestling.
Yeah, I could see a lot of that with, I mean, even kind of like this area where it kind of came from. And now, you know, we have, I mean, AIW's always been like one of the best, but, you know, it took a long time to get where we're at. Where some people say like maybe like it could be big on a national level, maybe not like an AEW, but saying like one of the top companies. It took people to come out and like do all that, and I can only like imagine where like countries to where there's like nothing. Oh, there's
entire just like many entire countries where there's no pro wrestling, but there's people who want to be pro wrestlers. Yeah, and so they just throw some mats down and they start training and they start teaching each other. And like, of course, like a pro wrestling school is important, but it's not the number one thing. Like you can figure this out, you can learn, you can go out and train and come back and teach other people. Like there's just this emerging like sort of a DIY ground up pro wrestling is sort of the most exciting thing for me, I think, right now. And that's something I want to, as my career evolves, get more involved in.
What's been some of your favorite countries to go to? I want to say this food wise. I'm always interested in like food from other countries because of how crazy it can be.
So I was vegan for a long time. Now I'm just vegetarian. So I don't fully get to experience everything. Yeah. But I love food and I love cooking and I love learning about food. So I feel like I appreciate food, even if it's not something that I would eat. Also, my partner, Speedball Mike Bailey, he has a culinary background. He will also eat anything and everything. So sometimes I get to just sort of like experience food in a country just through what he eats, even though it's not something that I would eat. And he talks to me about it. So let me think. I mean, I love Japan, even though like on the face, there's not a lot that I can eat there. What I can is great. They have vegan ramen. That's really good. Okay. Where else have I got? Like I got to go to Paris last year and like it's not necessarily a food city for a vegetarian, but there were like, seeing other food that people were eating, even if it's not something that I would eat, was very interesting. England right now has a very big like vegan and vegetarian movement. So like it's not, well, you know, a lot of the pro wrestlers, the UK pro wrestlers, they're vegan. Yeah. So like even just like, this isn't necessarily like a fancy food thing, but just like traveling around and stopping at like a road services, and there's always like tons of vegetarian sandwiches and stuff. Like that's something in the UK that's become more and more of a thing. I just recently was in Edinburgh for a couple of days in Scotland, and a ton of really good food there, which maybe you wouldn't think of. Also the whiskey scene there is tops. So I'm a whiskey drinker. So, that's very interesting to me. I don't know. I feel like I center a lot of my travels around food. So basically like name a place and there's food. Yeah. Like, that I've enjoyed.
You have like the main core stuff, but I think what I really, really love is like the junk food.
It's different.
Like even just like up north with Canada, like I know there's stuff that they get that we don't.
Yes.
Like Joe Louise, Mae West, Passion Flakies, and like those kind of things.
I'm nodding like people can see me on the recording. Yes.
Like I had friends who came down a couple years ago, and I gave them a list of like things I've heard of.
Yes.
I'm like, bring these to me, and they did. And like those three that I mentioned were some of my favorites besides ketchup chips like that, because I'm like, give me real ketchup chips like that you guys have,
right?
Or like I think I might have said, give me also a different all dress than the what came down.
Yeah, yeah, because it does. They're similar, but like if you put them side to side, you can taste the differences. Or if you talk to a Canadian, they'll tell you the differences.
The biggest thing they tell me to go try, but it's like I have to go there to try, is that's poutine.
Yeah, so like. Don't even get me started on poutine, because again, my partner Spival, he's Quebecois, so that's like a very cherished regional but relatively modern food for them.
Yeah, and
his like definition of what poutine is very, very strict, and he even like he'll expand it a little bit to include like some other like different versions of it, but there's like specifics in terms of like the cheese curds. I have been working on a vegan. Something that could possibly be like a substitute for a cheese curd that would be vegan, and it's nearly impossible because of like the squeakiness of it.
Yeah,
thinking maybe like a brined tofu. It's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think what else. Oh, so like when you're talking about snack foods, like I love black licorice. And I tweeted about this recently, and it like was very divisive.
Yes.
But I love black licorice, and I love the flavor of black licorice. So when I was talking about me in Copenhagen, in Denmark, black licorice is a very, very popular flavor, especially salted black licorice is something. The thing I have to be careful of, I don't eat gelatin. So a lot of the sweets have gelatin in them, but there's a lot of vegan black licorice stuff in Denmark. And I was going nuts for that. So I had a lot of black licorice, not to the point where it'd be dangerous, because like you can overindulge in black licorice, but I like that. Yeah, like little in England, there's a lot of vegetarian like gummy type snacks. So like for example, Justin today gifted me a bag of Swedish fish. Yes. And I love Swedish fish because I love gummy candies, but they don't have gelatin in them. So Swedish fish and Sour Patch Kids, they don't have gelatin. I can eat them. In England, there's a lot of these like gummy candies that they don't have gelatin in them. They're coated in beeswax for whatever reason, so they're technically not vegan, but it's okay. Percy Pigs is the number one.
The one that I know that's over there that's illegal here is Jelly Babies.
So yeah, because you can like, I think they're afraid kids are gonna like choke on them because they're
that's Wonder Balls. Not Swedish fish.
The Jelly Babies they look like gummy bears, but they're not.
They look like Sour Patch Kids, kind of, but they're not like sour, and they're not as hard as a
So they have like a cornstarchy kind of coating on them?
Yeah.
They have gelatin, so I've never eaten them.
Yeah, I figured that was with them, but they're illegal here because of a ingredient. Is, I guess, not approved by the FDA.
But that's funny.
Anytime I've had, like when Ben Ward used to come over here a lot for like GNO and everything, I used to be like, bring me Jelly Babies.
Jelly Baby.
Because they're like, you can bring them in, but like people can't sell them. But even though Amazon had them for a while, there's a certain brand that I guess is the top notch. And like I used to get them
I've
all
seen
the time.
them. I mean, I've seen them on like the sweets shelves.
Yeah.
And I know what you're talking about now that you're saying it.
It's a weird taste and texture, but I like it. And I got it from watching Doctor Who.
So see, now I know this about you. So I'll have to remember this next time I'm over there. Jelly Babies. Because like I said, I know they have, I know what doesn't have gelatin and I can eat. Because I used to love like gummy bears and gummy candy when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But so much of it I can't eat anymore. But like Swedish fish, Percy Pigs, which I love from England. Like they have a lot of vegetarian gummy stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, the sweets, the crisp selection is different there. Because I'm a big snack food person too. I just am a food person, I think. But everywhere I go, I try to like try different stuff.
Like we did a thing a while back. There's a subscription box called Snack Crate.
Okay, I don't know this one in particular, but is it like different like international snacks? I've seen those.
Every month it's a different country.
Huh.
And then like you can get the top tier comes with a drink from that country. And like it was cool to try all these other countries, even like some stuff I would never find again. But we do have, World Market, which you can get some of the stuff. So it's like, okay, cool. Like I don't have to like wait for that or order it internationally. I can go to a store and pick up certain things. Like England, they have Jammy Dodgers. I can go to a World Market and get Jammy Dodgers.
Yeah.
And that's a little, I know I've had conversations with some of my English friends, and some of them agree with me. It's like not enough jam to cookie ratio. Like if it was an Oreo, it's like there's not enough cream.
What cookie did I get really hooked on recently? So I like a custard cream. I like dippable. I like a dippable biscuit that I can dip in like a hot drink or a tea. So even just like a regular,
you got the language down.
Yeah, like just a dippable biscuit is good. But yeah, there's so many different varieties. Oh man, now I just want to be back in England and eat snacks. I don't even want to wrestle. I just want to eat food.
In between them and like Japan. Like, I know a lot of people go crazy for a lot of stuff over there, but I'm just like, they have how many Kit Kats, how many different Cokes? And like, that's just those two lines. Like,
I got really hooked on the J. Cola. It's like a Pepsi.
I've had it.
Pepsi. It was ginger, but it's Pepsi ginger. Like
comes around Christmas.
Yeah, it's like a Pepsi Max kind of thing. Like it's sugar free, or it's like got Splenda or something in it. But they had a ginger flavored one, and I got super hooked on that in Japan a couple times. And then in England, Pepsi Max, which they have there, like Pepsi Max is very popular there. It's not so much popular here anymore.
Yeah,
Pepsi Max. They had a ginger Pepsi Max, and I was like, oh boy, here we go, and it was awful. Yeah. And I shouldn't be drinking diet sodas or energy drinks or anything, but when I do, I like them to be tasty. Yeah. And I was so pumped to see ginger Pepsi Max, and it was gross. It was not the same.
The J. Cole, I would, for a brief period of time, it got, because we were doing this particular thing and Snack Crate at the same time. Yeah. There's one called Tokyo Treat, which is just snack food from Japan, and they like their snack foods is just also like on a different level. Yeah. Like some of the stuff they do, and it's like some of their snacks, like stuff you kind of have to build or whatnot. And I'm just like, that's just weird. But like but that's like, I got the drink one where it came with J. Cole the 1 month, and I don't like Pepsi, but I'm like, this is actually really good.
Well, like the other thing too, I think internationally is just like different. I like to look at just like different like convenience stores and stuff, and like just different snack selections. Like we were talking about Canada, like whenever I go up to Canada, I'll like bring back like a coffee crisp, something just like even just one like thing.
You can get those at World Market.
I know, but it's different when you just go when you get it there. So there's I'm a big ice cream person, and I always have been. There's a coffee crisp ice cream available in supermarkets in Canada now, and it's not even, so here's the thing. I'm a big ice cream person. It's not even proper ice cream. It's more of a frozen dessert. Like it doesn't have a high milk fat content or anything, but it is for some reason freaking delicious. So I'd seen it on the shelves. And one day, Speedball and I were like buying stuff for like a picnic or something. And I was like, oh, we're getting the coffee crisp ice cream. So we get it. And I looked at it and I was like, the hesitation was, it's not like high milk fat. It's not like, it's like a frozen dessert more than an ice cream. So it's like a Breyers versus a Ben & Jerry's.
Yeah, okay, that's kind of
so like Ben & Jerry's is like very rich. It has like a high milk fat on it. A Breyers is more of like a churned sort of frozen dessert. It's never as good.
Yeah.
It's good, but it's not proper ice cream.
Yeah.
That was my hesitation. But it's coffee crisp. So we get this thing, we open it. I scoop out 2 little mugs of it. The mugs are gone in 10 seconds. It's the best ice cream I think I've ever had in my life, this coffee crisp ice cream. And to the point where like we just couldn't buy it again because a half gallon was gone in a day. Like we couldn't buy it again. So someday I will buy the coffee crisp ice cream again. But if you ever are up in Canada you want a tasty frozen treat, the half gallon or whatever it is, liter, I don't know what the measure of it is there, of coffee crisp frozen dessert, delicious. There are other ones too. There's like a Chips Ahoy. There's a bunch of them. Way better than like a frozen ice cream dessert here.
Yeah.
But the coffee crisp, oh man.
Oh,
dangerous.
That's something I really want to try.
Dangerous. And it's like you can't bring it back or anything. You have to eat it there.
Yeah. Fuck.
Like we had a little cabin up by Quebec City, and so I'm like, okay, we have a supermarket, we have a freezer, like everything is in play here. We can buy the coffee crisp ice cream. Let's try it. We got it. And like, I think I was like eating it out of the carton at like 9 a.m. one day. And it was like, we gotta get rid of this. We can't have this anymore.
One topic I want to get into, I want to go back to, and it's something I don't like to bring up as much, but what was this? 2014.
Yeah.
I won a date with you.
Yes.
At AIW
You did.
JLIT tournament. And we had a conversation between...
I should probably preface this. So we used to win a date with Veda Scott for a couple years at JLIT, which is the big AIW tournament, where you could bid and you would win a date with me. And that date just would happen at the show in front of the crowd. In the olden days, it was like on the mic, but then eventually we just sort of like sat off to the side. But yeah, you would get your date. And sometimes like multiple people would bid and multiple people would have high bids. So we would just bring in like Jimmy Jacobs and you could get a date with Jimmy Jacobs.
That was the year I'm talking about, because that was just special in general, because there was like, I won the date with you, $270.
I think Allison Kay was also up for grabs.
No,
was it Allison Kay that year?
Heidi,
yes.
I forget what she went for, not nearly as much. And then they were like, I think Jimmy was like, just like put me up, fuck it, let's do it. And then he went, I think it was like $30. But like we all were sitting there at a table, and the thing that I'll never forget is, as we're kind of like talking, Jim, who won the date with Heidi, who works at a movie theater, just goes, "What's your favorite movie?" And before we get into the conversation, it was Jimmy that was like, no, you don't ask a question. You state something, and that person is going to be implied to respond back.
Right.
He's like, that's a better way for a conversation. And I was like, damn, that's right. And like, you turn to me, I'll fucking never forget this. You're just like, well, I don't really, have a favorite movie. I just have one movie I don't like. In my head immediately, there's like a million movies running through my head. I know exactly
where this is going.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. To me, like, I don't like Napoleon Dynamite. That was a movie that I just didn't like.
It's terrible.
And I have a friend who naturally kind of talks like that. So when I heard that, like, that whole thing, I'm like, oh my God, this is my friend all over. But anyway, I'm like, maybe it's Napoleon Dynamite, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And you're like, Tommy Boy. And like, the world stopped for a second. 'Cause that's literally one of my top 5 favorite movies.
But it has layers to it.
It does. But you explained why.
Yes.
And I want you to explain why here, because it's hard for me to like tell other people.
So I don't have a favorite movie. I did at the time have a least favorite movie, and that movie was Tommy Boy. And it's because I don't particularly like it, although I do love Chris Farley. Mm-hmm. I don't really like the movie. The reason it's my least favorite movie is because I had seen it on a New Year's Eve when I was in like 8th grade, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And I was like the third wheel on a double date, and the movie was on, and they like went off to do whatever. Yeah. Again, we were in 8th grade, so like went off to like make out or something. And I was like left alone on the couch to watch Tommy Boy. And I just remember thinking like, this sucks. This movie sucks. David Spade sucks. Chris Farley sucks. I hate this because my birthday is New Year's Day. So I'm like, this birthday sucks. Everything's terrible. And I just like this hatred of Tommy Boy, like just built up inside me, and I hated it. And then when I talked to you about the Chris Farley show?
Because right around that time, I just got Audible.
Yes.
And I think I had downloaded it, but I hadn't listened to it because I bought that book when it came out, but I'm just not a huge sit down at night and read a book kind of person. So having this Audible version, I'm like, this is perfect.
And because you drive a lot.
Yeah, so. I was over the road at the time, so like I would listen to podcasts a lot during the week, but then like during the weekend, not as many are coming out. So boom, I could jam out an audiobook. So then it was like, well, I'm like, I'll listen to the audiobook. You read the book, and we'll come back and talk about it. So
there's a book called The Chris Farley Show, and it's basically it's a biography of Chris Farley, but it's like written by his friends in different, going through his life, different recollections from his friends, and it's a very emotional, very powerful. It's a heartbreaking book, but it's something that really resonated with me as a performer and an artist. And after I read this, I did a full rewatch of all the Chris Farley movies. And it was like, I don't hate Tommy Boy. I love Tommy Boy. But I hate Tommy Boy. And like, so it still remains like one of my conflicted movies where after reading the book and kind of like how much it like resonated with me, I went back and watched the film again and I was like, man, now I have even more emotions. So now freaking Tommy Boy is like the movie that I have the most emotions tied up into.
That's crazy.
And it's still, I don't know, man. I still can't watch it without feeling a little resentful. I
mean, I can understand that. Like for me, I mean, that's what made me fall in love with Chris Farley.
Yeah.
Like I remember my dad got it on pay-per-view, like whenever that was a thing, big thing. I'm just like, oh, this movie, let's watch it. Yeah. And then I come to find out years later that came out on my 9th birthday. So I'm just like, this is like...
That's like an Ohio thing too. It's like very...
And it was in Ohio, even though it was filmed in Canada.
Yep.
It's highly quotable for me. Like one of my biggest icebreakers for people was like doing like Chris Farley impressions from that movie.
Yeah.
And like doing, like I can do the diner scene. Especially like when he rips up the roll and makes that noise, like I can do that. And that's what makes a lot of people pop because like it's not just making random noises, like I can do like, cause it's basically a duck sound. Yeah. And like I do it and just everybody pops. And like that, to me, that was like a big icebreaker of, hey, I'm kind of funny. And like I was in drama club in high school and I absolutely loved it. And there was like one scene for this one show. I had like pantomime stuff. And like my facial expressions, like there's people who I didn't know would walk up to me like after this show and after a different other place too. They're like, you really reminded me of Chris Farley.
Right.
And I'm just like, you have no idea what that means to me. Like if a friend tells me, they know my love for it. But a complete stranger just going like, man, you remind me of Chris Farley.
Yeah. I mean, like I would say to people, if they really want to just like, especially if they're an artist themselves or a performer themselves, like read this or listen to it. I think most people find it pretty resonant, even if you're not a fan.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm like the biggest Chris Farley fan in the world, but I like this book connected with me. I mean, I have endless book recommendations, so I could say that about pretty much every book. But yeah, no, Tommy Boy still like the most emotions tied up in one movie, I think, still to this day. Maybe I'll watch it this week. Let's see. I'll check back in with you and see how I feel afterwards.
Like it's like I said, of all movies you could have said
Tommy Boy.
It's like it's in my top 5 with Clerks 2, The Dark Knight, Scarface, and I'm missing something. I can't remember what.
I genuinely don't.
Ghostbusters.
I don't have a favorite movie. I have a lot of movies I like, but I don't think I have a favorite film. I don't, except for Tommy Boy, which would be near the bottom.
Broke my heart. Really did broke my heart. How about like one of the last topics we'll get into, because I think it's so amusing and it's something. Like your former love of cakes, puppets, and clowns. Like those teenage years for you.
Yeah. Well, you say former love, but that implies that I don't still love cakes, puppets, and clowns because I love all of them a lot. I don't have as much time to bake anymore, which is heartbreaking to me because I love baking and I especially love novelty baking. And even just like fun cupcakes and stuff. So that's something that like when I like stop traveling so much and settle more, like a kitchen that I can bake in is something I very much look forward to. I freaking love puppets on every level. I love Muppets. I love regular type puppets. I love marionettes. I love mascots and like giant costumes that's sort of like a puppet for your body. I love it all.
Okay. Which is where probably the cat head came from.
Yeah. Because my two favorite things are mascots and professional wrestling. So why would I not combine them and become my own mascot? Yeah. Obviously. Basically. Who wouldn't think of that? No, I love puppets. I've always been a huge Muppet fan ever since I was a kid. My library, like, because I've been going to the library since I was just talking about this on Greg Iron's podcast earlier today. Like, my mom got me a library card as soon as I could write my name. Like, that was the rule at my public library. Like, if you could write a name on the card, you get your own library card. So that was like 2. Like, I'm little. Okay. I get a library card. We start going to the library every week. In addition to books, the library also has like toys that you can take out. And my library had puppets. They had felt puppets.
Mine did too.
Yep. So I started taking out the puppets, as many as I could take out at a time. And that's why I kind of like learned a little bit about like making the puppets, and I started to make my own puppets. And then I got really into ventriloquy after a certain point, like into sort of the history of ventriloquy and ventriloquism, and like Edgar Bergen and all these people got really into that kind of puppets. And I just kept making like I was did miniatures for a while too. Like I was crafting a lot.
Yeah.
So puppets was like a natural extension of all of that. To the point where like I thought like, I wonder if there's a way that I could like do this professionally, because I used to just do puppet shows for my brother and his friends, and then like for more kids, and like I was a camp counselor, so obviously that's a great outlet for puppets.
Oh, yeah.
And then it kind of like I pushed it aside for a little bit, and then recently I've gotten back into puppets again in terms of making. I've always been into puppets, like watching them, but making them, I've gotten back into puppets because I was in Japan last year, and I had a big open space in my apartment. I had a period of downtime. I had pitched the idea like to Speedball of I had some content I wanted to film, and I was thinking about doing an interview show, but instead of me being the interviewer, it would be a puppet of me. And he's like, that's ridiculous. We have to do it.
Exactly.
So I was like, I just have to make a Veda puppet. So I kind of like went back to the drawing board of how I remember making puppets. There's some watch some YouTube videos. I have this space in the apartment and some downtime, and the 100 yen store down the street had all these art supplies. So the puppets just came from me like wandering around shopping, buying stuff. So I make this Veda puppet, and I took it to like Tokyo Disneyland, and I take it around and I'm filming stuff with it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make more puppets. So I made I made a Speedball puppet and a Mal puppet, like his tag partner. I made a puppet that we ended up using in a match at one point. And I made there's a lot of puppets out there. Like we've done a lot of work with the puppets, and I never ended up incorporating that much into wrestling because there's only so much you can do. I just really, really like reignited my love of puppets. And then, in terms of the clown thing, well, that's easy. When I was a kid, I was a Girl Scout, and the Girl Scouts are still very important to me. And there was a clowning unit that we were able to do at one, like a special like clown camp or something like that, because I was really into magic. So I thought the natural extension
there was that part of it too.
The natural extension of being a magician, I thought, was clowning. So I went to clown camp, basically. Yeah. Like a camp session that was devoted to clowning. So I could learn a little bit about like pantomime and juggling and different kinds of stuff to work my magic into this clown act that I thought I was going to have when I was 8. Yeah. And I don't know, clowns don't scare me. I think they're great. I love clowns. So I never got super, like I did some clowning for a while, but I never got like super into that because I didn't like the grease paint. This is true. I didn't wear makeup until I got into wrestling. Except for clown makeup. And I didn't like the process that it took to put the clown face on. So now that I wrestle, I wear makeup. But this is like the first time, like as an adult, I've started to wear makeup. I never wore it before that. And partly it was because I thought it took too long. So like clown stuff, that took too long for me. Wow. But yeah, that's a very long answer to, no, I still love cakes, clowns, and puppets.
What's one of your favorite Sesame Street Muppets?
Oscar the Grouch.
Oscar the Grouch. Okay.
Oscar the Grouch is my absolute favorite. My favorite Muppet is Ralph the dog. 100%. Okay. Like, not even close. But my favorite Sesame Street character is Oscar.
For me, it was always like Cookie Monster, and like he's
Cookie
still
Monster's
like
a good choice too.
He still like resonates with me because like they'll do like stuff with him like on Twitter, and everything. Like I remember I caught a tweet the other day, and I'm like, this just character is great. And he still resonates with everybody.
Yeah, I always loved Oscar. I have a lot of Oscar stuff. They have an Oscar at the Smithsonian. I was pretty excited to see that the other year because it had been in storage for a while and they have it back out now. So I got to see the Oscar. But yeah, I'd say Oscar. But my favorite Muppet overall is Ralph, 100%.
Have you got to go to, I forget where it's at. Maybe it was in New York, New Jersey, where they have the Muppet Museum?
So I didn't get to go. No.
Okay.
I haven't gone. But I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I actually just finished another Jim Henson biography. I read like a ton of just like biographies of different puppeteers, anything like Jim Henson I'll read. Just because I like to see like the thought process behind people who perform in like slightly unconventional ways, and like puppetry is sort of that.
Have you gone down the rabbit hole of Mr. Rogers?
So I don't know if I would call it gone down the rabbit hole, but like especially so Obviously, I watched Mr. Rogers as a kid. And then there was that Mr. Rogers documentary that came out a little while ago. That was great. So I started to read a little bit more. And then now with this new Mr. Rogers movie coming out, I just read Yeah, it's out now, right? Yeah. I just read an article written by, I can't remember the writer's name. Shoot. It's the writer that Mr. Rogers is talking to in this movie. He's from Esquire. I think.
Know his name.
Yeah.
He's in the documentary, but I was listening to an interview about that dude, and he basically said like they didn't give like a lot of like who these people were, and like it was just like this was his friend, which a lot of people were his friend, and then they'd be like writer, but they wouldn't tell you what. Yeah,
so I read an interview with this guy who's featured pretty heavily, and like the movie is about his relationship with Mr. Rogers.
Partially.
Yeah.
It's him and I guess like another writer, and it's just kind of like how loosely based on his interaction with other people.
That's what he said. He was like, so our interactions are he's like, he really liked the movie. He really liked being involved with it. The interactions are truthful. They like fictionalized him, and he was fine with that. But I read an article with him, and now I haven't seen the movie yet because it just came out, and I don't go to movies when they're out because I need to wait for them to be on an airplane. But sense. I might go see this.
Tom Janot.
Okay, yes.
I had to look up because like he's been on a couple podcasts, but I've listened to it. But
yes. So I think now there's going to be a lot of stuff, and I just downloaded. I haven't started it yet. It's like a 5 or 6 part podcast about Mr. Rogers.
Finding Fred.
Is it Finding Fred? Would it be Finding Fred? Let me look.
There's 2 that I listen to. Finding Fred is
it good?
Is the better of the 2.
So I literally just it's Finding Fred. Yeah.
The episode that I'm not going to recommend because you're gonna still listen to it, but the one that I love the most, and I even had my fiance listen to it last week. Right, it is called Beth. It's episode 4.
Oh, from Finding Fred. Okay, so I've downloaded.
Yeah.
I have them all downloaded that are out. I love multi-part podcast series, and I'll listen to pretty much. I have a Dolly Parton one that I'm in the middle of right now. Who I love Dolly Parton. Like that's a whole other podcast. Here it is, Beth. Okay, so I will listen. I'll probably listen to this tonight.
A very good episode.
But I love podcast series. So when I saw this one, obviously I had to download it. I'm in the middle of a 8-part on Watergate right now. Once I finish that, I'll probably move on to the Mr. Rogers. I do have 9 hours to drive tonight, so I will get to it, I'm sure.
Let me know after you get past that
Between
episode.
Tonight and tomorrow, I'm sure I'll get to it. Beth is the one you said.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Like it's a good podcast as a whole because it was that documentary that made me go down the rabbit hole and like made me go, oh my God, this guy was great. Like it was like what he did for like kids is just nuts. Like now you like go back as an adult and go, oh my, like this can resonate with an adult. Like you can still learn stuff. It's not like, you can't go down the drain part.
Sorry, I have no attention span, so I started like checking my email out of habits. That's why I was distracted for a second.
No, but like, there's that aspect with him, and it's so. I always wondered like if he would have lived like this long, like what would have happened because his work was fantastic, and there's a lot of great stuff.
So that's what this article was kind of talking about. The writer was talking about how many people talk to him like, if Mr. Rogers was alive today, what would he think of Donald Trump? What would he think of this? And what would he think of this? And like people just like speculating on that, and like I don't want to like say what the article says because I can't remember exactly. Yeah. And I don't want to, but like check it out. Like look him up. It's recent because he's talking about the movie that just came out.
Yeah, okay.
But he talks about that. He talks about like had he lived longer or like been alive now, what conversations would he want us to have with like our children about like climate change or something like that?
Yeah.
Like things that are scary and resonant to children right now. How would Mr. Rogers handle them? And maybe that's something we should be thinking about.
Yeah. And like he even changed like the way kind of like I do podcasts and everything and interviews. I used to hate silence. And like watching the documentary, there's like he loves silence.
Yes.
And to me, I'm like, how can that be? But like I've kind of learned like if you're talking and if I just stay quiet for a couple more seconds, you're kind of implied to keep talking.
Right.
And like that might add something or I might be able to go a different direction with it. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, that's what I got from a podcaster. And I was like, that's awesome. But that series is great. I can't recommend it anymore. And I don't get a chance to listen to a lot of podcasts like that. but I was blown away and I loved it.
So I am a reader. Like I'm constantly reading, but and I mentioned this earlier today when I was doing another podcast. I say this to people all the time because they know when they're in my car, there's going to be podcasts going on, or that I don't listen to music at the gym. I listen to podcasts at the gym because I can't like read while I'm working out and I can't read while I'm driving. So I usually do podcasts then. So between books and podcasts, I always have something going. I'm not so much a music person anymore, which is like a weird thing to say. It's not like I don't.
Yeah.
I don't follow as much of it anymore.
Same way for a while. He also has a audio book where there's only one, at least on Audible, that he's reading. Oh. So I found that like really interesting, and it's called "You Are Special." Words of Wisdom from America's Beloved Neighbor. And that actually, there's a quote in there that he talked about that he loved, and it's everything essential in life is visible to the eye, and somewhere along those lines. And I think I've tweeted that out or something, and it's like a really deep thing because it's how you interpret it.
Yeah.
Is it love? Is it even just the simple air? Like the air you breathe, it's essential to life, but it's invisible. And I don't know, that's really got me on that. But it's starting to get a little late. Okay. But I want to finish this.
Oh yeah, you have a little gimmick you like to do at the end of the podcast, right?
Yes, I've never heard anybody call it that. But yes, we have none other than the Fave 5 questions.
Hey, this is Booker T, 5-time champ, and this is the Fave 5 questions. Now, can you dig it?
And some of these could be really interesting because I have some like food-related ones, but there was that like you won't be able to answer. Like, I'll throw this one out right now. It's not one of the official ones, but like wings, bone in or out. Well,
so here's an interesting thing about that. I have a list of foods that I've never eaten, because it's something that I didn't eat before I stopped eating meat. I stopped eating meat when I was very young. Chicken wings are on that. I've never had a chicken wing.
Wow.
Boneless, bone-in, neither. But I do love like a seitan wing, or I use buffalo sauce on a lot of stuff, like on tofu. So I like the flavor of like the buffalo sauce. Never had a chicken wing though. That's on the list of things I've never had a real version of it.
Have you ever watched Hot Ones on YouTube?
Yes.
Like, I know, like, I've learned, like, if you are vegan or vegetarian, like, they give you tofu wings.
Yeah.
Like, when I found that out, I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
It makes sense, but it's really just like a vehicle for the sauce more than anything.
Pretty much.
But yeah, no, wings, that's a food I've never had and never will have. There was a list of stuff that I've never eaten and won't. A Big Mac. I've never had a Big Mac. Oh, wow. I never will.
I'll start with question number 1. I think I know where you lie on this. It's the international question of wrestling. Sheets or Wawa, or is there a third option that you like better?
So honestly, I would say that I'm kind of like either or. I know that's not a popular answer. Okay. So the coffee's better at Wawa. Okay. Wawa has like their holiday blend out right now. I wait all year for this. It's sort of a gingerbread flavored coffee. Their pumpkin spice is ace too. So I like the Wawa coffee better. And a lot of times that's what I'm going in for, is the coffee.
Okay. True.
Back in the day, Sheetz used to have the better food selection, but Wawa has really upped their game on that too. So I don't know. I'm from Philly.
That's why I figured you...
I feel like I have to say Wawa,
yeah.
But I'm not anti-Sheetz at all. I just went to Sheetz today. I'm friends with Greg Iron. He's Mr. Sheetz. Like, I can't not say Sheetz. But, and I have a Sheetz card, and I go to Sheetz for gas all the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say it's both. But if you made me choose, it'd probably be Wawa because the coffee's better.
The one around here I love is Gecko.
Gecko is good. So Gecko has... everything bread for their sandwiches, and it's delicious. It's like an everything bagel, but it's bread.
And then, like, I've been told it's a Wawa ripoff, but they got the Pilgrim for Thanksgiving.
Oh, because Wawa has the gobbler.
Yeah. And to me, that's like everybody's like go-to Gecko sandwich. Question number 2: Addams Family or Munsters?
Addams Family, 100%. I love the Addams Family.
Why?
So the Munsters is...
There's no... I always say
the thing
people,
is, there's
no wrong answer.
The Munsters is a little too cheesy and a little too hokey for me, but it's not a rip-off Addams Family. They developed completely at the same time. Yes, which is very interesting to me.
Started and ended within weeks of each other.
Right, and I read something about Charles Addams and then listened to a multi-part podcast about him, and he was an interesting fella and how he like developed the cartoons because they were greeting cards originally. Yeah. But I don't want to say the current Addams Family movie because that looks like it might be dreadful. I'm not sure. The cartoon that's out now, I don't know.
It's a kid's movie, it's hard to judge it.
But the Addams Family movies, like the Angelica Houston movies, of the Christina Ricci, like of my childhood, like hold up so hard. I watched The Addams Family the other day, and it was banging. It's so good. So I would say Addams Family over the Munsters. Munsters are a little too cheesy for me. A little bit.
Well, like I think with those,
even if you compare the series,
I was about to say like Monsters never got a really like. Oh, okay, no, they did get a revival and it tanked. Like
so, like
or like maybe 2 revivals and they both tanked.
John Astin as Gomez is like the OG Gomez, but I think we've all like decided that Raul Julia is like the Gomez, and I think that he just like that character, is so good. And his relationship with Morticia like just makes the movies, and that's sort of like that pushes the Addams Family ahead a little bit. So I'm going to go with Addams Family over Munsters.
I think that's also one of the rare occasions the sequel's better. I think Values is
Addams Family Values snaps. Okay, like it's good
because I think the whole like Fester like learning who he is, like I don't know, that just it doesn't have the same magic like the series did. So when you actually bring that back. In Values, like it just all makes sense. It's all fun, and that's when Wednesday has some of her best stuff at the summer camp.
Addams Family over Munsters, 100%.
Well, they're based off Universal Monsters, so you're not too far off. Question number 3: best physical portrayal of the Joker.
Oh, I'm not. This is not my. Okay, this is not my wheelhouse. Oh, I mean, let me think. Maybe like.
Actually, if you don't have one, we'll
Jack Nicholson. I enjoyed that. Like that's not my like. I'm not a comics person. It's not really my thing.
So
I just saw. Now. Okay. I just saw the new Joker movie, and because when I'm in England, there's a movie theater right next to my gym, and they do matinee prices. So a lot of times we'll work out in the morning and we'll go to the movies. So I see a lot of movies when I'm in England, and we went to see the Joker, and Speedball and I, like 10 minutes into it, we just like look at each other and we're like, this movie is not for us. Like we are not the audience for this. So it didn't really like resonate with me so much. Not really my thing. Enjoyable romps, let's say. Maybe Jack Nicholson.
I'll redact that question. I won't have a count. Physical media or digital?
Oh, it depends on what the media is, though.
That's such a common one.
So I can even just like narrow it down to just books because I'm a books person over anything else. I love a physical book. I love the experience of a book. I love having cultivating a library for myself. I love writing like marginalia. Like I love writing notes in my books. I love just like the smell of a book. I love a library. But with all the traveling I do, I use a lot of ebooks, and there's a benefit to those too. Like the way that I can highlight and go back to things, and like I can have basically an entire library inside my tablet. I use the ebook service from my public library all the time. So I don't know. I think it just kind of depends on like, you can embrace both for your lifestyle.
Yeah.
I mean, like I have boxes and boxes of like wrestling DVDs and wrestling tapes like at my mom's house. But when it comes to like watching wrestling now, it's all digital. I stream everything. Like I don't pop in DVDs anymore because I don't have them to pop in. So like, I think it kind of just depends on what your lifestyle is. So I'm going to give you a non-answer to that, especially if we're going on books.
God, you're the queen of these today.
I mean, but the thing is like, I have physical copies, like actual physical media of every book that I love. But I also will oftentimes have a digital copy so I can read it whenever I want. I
feel like I'm that way with music. If you're an artist that I really like, because like I have Apple Music, so I'll download it.
Yeah.
But if I can go out and buy a physical copy to hold it, like I'm going to do it because I'm going to support you and whatever. But I get that way. And especially too with the thing, like with movies, we're getting to a point now you can buy a physical copy and get a digital copy instantly.
Like, I don't think I will ever experience the level of joy I did when I was 10 years old and I would go to the library and get like a tote bag full of books and bring them home and just like spread them out in front of me and decide which one I was going to read first. I don't think like that joy, you can't get that sort of joy from a digital copy of a book, like from an ebook. Yeah. But you can get close.
That's almost similar to, I think, a lot of kids when growing up, like they'd go get a bunch of video games for the weekend, a bunch of movies, and probably doing the same thing of like, which game am I going to play? Which movie am I going to watch?
Versus when you like just kind of like download it onto your Switch or whatever, and you just have it. Yeah, or you just pick it up on Netflix and you just have an unlimited selection. Yeah. So there's like positives and negatives.
Okay. Question number 4. Let's go. Do you sleep with your door open or closed?
Oh, see, now I'm going to have to give you a non-answer. It depends where I am. Because most of the places I live, all I have is a bedroom. Like, okay. I live in like a share house, so all I have is a bedroom.
That's true.
So that's a doors closed situation.
Okay, we'll do it like
if I was in
your private residence, like your own home.
Open, I think. Okay. It's like there's no need to close it then. I think I only close the door when I have to, in general. I'm a big like open floor plan kind of person. Mm-hmm. I'm perfectly happy just having one room for all of my space. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess it's another non-answer.
I was always door closed until I started living with a cat.
And you got to let him go in and out.
Yeah, well, because I know when we got our Dexter and he was a kitten, I was like, okay, like we'll have him sitting here. After he got to a certain age, it was like after a certain time, and I'm like, all right,
closed
fine,
doors
go.
Just mean crying. And
so I've learned to sleep with a door open, but I grew up in a house where the living room was like right off where my room was. So like if my dad was up watching TV, that's like light into my room, and like I'm not going to fall asleep. So I went so many years, and I thought everybody did like, oh, I'm going to bed, close the door.
Yeah.
And then to come to find out, no, people sleep with open.
Like I think for me, like, because I've all the like traveling around I do so often, I'm in like a shared living situation where there's like 8 of us who live in a house. So my room, the door will be closed because it's my only like space. That's mine.
Question number 5. Waiting for this non-answer. Pancakes or waffles?
Oh, no, this is not even a question. Totally situational. Okay. Here's the thing. Frozen waffles are bullshit. Don't even bother. Do not come for me with frozen waffles. Like, it's gross. Mm-hmm. Nothing. So if we're talking frozen waffles, no. There's frozen pancakes too. I don't want to discuss those either. Basically, a frozen breakfast food is a no, but I know a lot of people like the Eggo waffles. Disgusting. There is very, very little though that can top a fresh waffle. Mm-hmm. Here's the other part of this equation. Pancakes. I do love pancakes. I actually had some pancakes today. I love pancakes. I cannot make pancakes. It's the one thing I can cook anything. I can't make pancakes. I don't know. I'm very impatient sometimes when it comes to pancakes. I flip them too early. My dad, when I was growing up, he made pancakes every Sunday. They were delicious. He still has a griddle. He can still make pancakes. If I try making pancakes on those griddles, it's not going to happen. I can't make my own pancakes. So like pancakes to me, that's like a special occasion food. Yeah. But a waffle. I have a waffle iron. I mix up protein powder. Okay. I make protein waffles all the time and just eat them plain. I like the aesthetic of the waffle. Mm-hmm. But I can make my own waffles. I can't make my own pancakes. So again, it's a non-answer. It kind of depends. If I go out and there's a Belgian waffle, I'll probably get the waffle. But like pancakes to me is like, oh, breakfast at the diner. Pancakes. I don't know. I get another non-answer. I'm sorry. That's terrible. I can't make pancakes. It's like my cooking kryptonite. I can't do it.
Well, like, I mean, I have other questions that I could have asked. Yeah. But there's like some that are definitely like, you're not going to have an answer. Like one of them is bacon or sausage.
So I do have an answer for that.
Oh, geez. I could have went for that.
It's another non-answer.
Okay, then.
So the meat eaters will disagree with me on this, but like the taste of bacon, like the smokiness and the saltiness, like there's that flavor is recreated a lot of times in like a vegan bacon thing. So I know I remember the taste of bacon and I know the taste of bacon and it is delicious. So I understand why people like bacon so much. However, I don't remember like what actual like meat sausage tastes like. And I've had vegetarian and vegan sausages that I've been told are like slightly the same. So if you're going with like a vegetarian or vegan version of them, I would probably go with the sausage because I like a hot dog. Sausage.
I mean, another one which I thought you would have gone one way, but I forgot you do love both, and that's coffee or energy drinks.
Yeah, I tried to get off energy drinks for a really long time. Particularly like so when I was spending a lot of time in Japan, the energy drink selection there because I only really drink the sugar-free ones. Not great. I was drinking all coffee there because there's tons of coffee and espresso beverages. Yeah. England has gotten more with the sugar-free monsters, but that's about it. So I was like able to ease off. Then I come back here and like rain is out with all sorts of like badass flavors. Yeah. Right back on the energy drinks. I'm like, there's one burning a hole in my backpack right now. And you gave me a monster. Yeah. So I am
like, because I used to always bring the pink lemonade ones. I don't think they sell those anymore.
They don't make it anymore. So that's part of what got me off energy drinks in the first place is because I like the pink lemonade rehab. That was gone. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm off energy drinks. Then other ones landed and they have good flavors. And basically I am just a cauldron of chemicals, but I drink a lot of coffee.
question, the official question number 6, those other ones didn't count, that I tailor around my guests. And for you, you kind of mentioned earlier, what was or is your favorite Girl Scout cookie?
So,
non-answer.
No, it's not a non-answer. It's an answer, but I don't know regionally if you'll know it as a Samoa or a Caramel Delight.
Samoa.
So I'm from the Northeast where they're called Caramel Delights. And it's that cookie. It's the chocolate caramel coconut cookie. Yes.
So that means that's the area right now that has like the different s'mores cookie, which I really want to try.
Yeah. So like Girl Scout cookies, when I was growing up and selling them, like there was like maybe 5 or 6 varieties, and they would introduce like 1 or 2 new ones. And there was actually a strawberry, I forget what it was called. It was like a strawberry jam cookie, sort of like a Jammy Dodger, that they introduced at one point.
Okay.
To the point where like I was excited when I saw Jammy Dodgers because I was like, oh, it's like that Girl Scout cookie, which it's similar. It's that weird like sticky jelly, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a Caramel Delight or a Samoa is my absolute favorite.
I was like, what was it? I was always Thin Mint, and then I switched to Tagalongs, and now I've gotten to the point where I'm on the Samoa train where I'm just like, so good.
That's another thing. Peanut butter patties. We've always known them as the peanut butter patty.
Okay.
It's a Tagalog.
Okay.
So they're all, and then there's a peanut butter sandwich. Do they still make the peanut butter sandwich?
I don't
that
remember.
One's like
it
looks like an Oreo, but it's got like an oat biscuit and peanut butter in it.
Yeah.
It's like a lesser peanut butter patty.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm also from Tasty Cake Country, and the peanut butter patty and the peanut butter tandy cake are very similar.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, I have an answer for that one. It's a Caramel Delight.
That will like wrap this up. Any final thoughts or social media last minute plugs before we go?
Yeah, my Twitter is @It's Veda Time. I'm sure you'll tag that when you put this up. That's the social media I use the most. So pretty much is that.
And then V for Veda on Instagram.
It's V for Veda on Instagram, but I usually post more on Twitter. And if I post on Instagram, I'll post it on Twitter too.
Okay.
But if you want to follow me on Instagram, get those followers up, you can do that too. Nope, that's all I got.
All right, Veda, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Listen to Virtual Pros, the world's only wrestling podcast. On iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Listen to Virtual Pros, available on iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Available on iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Available on iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Available on iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud.
And there you have it. My interview with Veda Scott. Really awesome. That was the first name for me to cross off on my bucket list for interviews of 2020, and I recorded it at the end of November, so I got kind of a month head start. Spoiler alert, there's no other names that I have officially recorded yet. I have some interviews that I'm working on. One thing that I do love about this kind of format is that I go off AIW's schedule, and actually, little programming note, the next 4 episodes are going to be all about AIW. We got previews and reviews for 2 upcoming AIW shows. And there's been a lot of stuff, too, that's gone on within AIW that I haven't had a real chance to talk about. A lot of cool stuff. First off, the merging of Smart Mark Video and IWTV. So now there's going to be a lot more of AIW and on IWTV for that matter. We have the AIW's next show, which we will be previewing right here on the podcast, and that is Built to Last. That's Friday, February 7th, bell time of 7:30 at the Odeon in Cleveland, Ohio. We'll go over that card. Then obviously the week after that, we'll do the review. And then next up after that, we have Hey Yo, Saturday, February 22nd, 7:30 bell time at the Tadmore Shrine in Akron, Ohio. Special guest, Scott Hall. I'm really, really looking forward to AIW's return to Akron. No, as of this recording, nothing's been really announced for that show besides that, so we'll definitely have a lot rolling out within a short amount of time. And then we also have, Thunder in Paradise coming up, the announcement of J-Lit 2020, and we have the Chandler Biggins Memorial Tag Team Tournament being replaced, and it got replaced right, like the day before we released the episode talking about reviewing 2019 and previewing 2020. So we had picks who was going to win the Chandler Biggins Memorial Tag Team Tournament. That could potentially be different, with the Biggins Bowl 2020. So we'll get into that in June. So there'll be a lot to come up with that. And also throwing it out there for any independent wrestlers who are listening to this. At the day of that Akron show, Saturday, February 22nd, there's going to be a new talent initiative. And, when this happened last year, this gave a moment to Cabana Man Dan, Lee Moriarty, Wardlow, and then a handful of others. And I'm hoping to see some more wrestlers either from this area or not from this area, whatever, here in Akron and make an impact on that night too, and make it on the card. It's going to be a fun show. I'm really looking forward to that. So like I said, we have 4 episodes of that coming up, and then there might be some interview time after that. So that will do it for us here on Wrestling Cheers. If you want to find me on social media, I am Heavyset330 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, much like the show is at Wrestling Cheers. Facebook.com/Wrestling Cheers, Twitter.com/Wrestling Cheers, and Instagram.com/Wrestling Cheers. Email, if you so choose to desire, WrestlingCheers@gmail.com. And we have the merch store over at whatamaneuver.net. Like I said, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to this fine podcast, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or Podbean, WrestlingCheers.podbean.com. Check out other friends on the Trending Topics Network, such as All Beer Inside, Eurovision Showcase, and Wrestling with Altitude. Check out our other podcast friends, such as Let the Hate Flow Through You, Pod Van Dam, Super Fantastic Podcast, The Road Home from Wrestling, Haunted Home Video, The IndieCast, Center of the Universe, Sobros Network, Big Gold Belt Podcast, The Co-Host Wrestling Show, Spotlight Series, I Got Your 5 Stars, Not Ready for Primetime Wrestling, At Odds with Wrestling, and It's Evolution Baby. Check out our other non-podcast friends, such as Thrift Store Jobber, The Savage Stash, Mouse's Wrestling Adventures, Sickening Pictures, Good Company, Smokin' Jay's Barbecue, Wrestle Void, Midwest Territory, Southern Underground Pro, and the official graphic designer of Wrestling Cheers, Moy Boy Designs. That will do it for us here on Wrestling Cheers, where everybody knows your name, even if you don't like Tommy Boy. Like, what the hell? Later.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Would you like to get away? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, and you're only glad you can. You're a big warrior,